Welcome to the new YouTube channel. If you haven't already done it, hit the subscribe button to follow us all season long for updates and content. So happy that you're here. It's going to be a great year.
Things are looking bright and shiny here in Detroit, Rich, but they're not looking so bright and shiny in Seattle. Let's start there. They ended up pulling off a win, but they did not get the help from the NFC North 2 years in a row. The Bears could not pull off a win. Richard, give me a little recap on the Seattle Seahawks, their season. How disappointed do you think they are internally?
Yeah, I think they're pretty disappointed. Last season was different. They didn't have the expectations. They were dealing with the departure of Russ after, a decade with the team, so you're dealing with that kind of transition. So the expectations were low. So, they overachieved. They made the playoffs. It was a great story, but it's kind of the opposite this year. You had the expectations. Geno's coming off a Pro Bowl season. Bobby's back in town. You expected this team to go to the playoffs. They end up with the exact same record, 9-8, that they had last year, but didn't get the help from the NFC North Chicago Bears that your Detroit Lions were able to give them last year. So they missed the playoffs. Pete says he's coming back, so that's positive. Bobby had a Pro Bowl season, which is the case every season, however many consecutive this is for Bobby. And he's been able to play at a high level, but it just wasn't enough this year. I'm sure there's frustration offensively. They expected to be able to do more. They had high expectations with this receiving core and what they could possibly be doing. Your boy K9 had a really good year, but was banged up at times, and they felt that loss. It was just disappointing because they had it in hand. The games they had to have, they did not have. The Pittsburgh game being the one that's glaring and sticks out right now because that's a game where they've had some instability at quarterback. Mason Rudolph was starting. You would have expected Seattle at home to be able to pull that game out, but they did not. The defense didn't show up. They ran the ball down their throats, up and down the field. So it's disappointing, but they got to get back to the drawing board, figure out what they want to do defensively and schematically. They had Julian Love. They had 2 Pro Bowlers on defense. Offensively, they got to figure out what they want to do with JSN, Tyler Lockett, if they're going to continue to go with what they've gone with. And they have to find some help on the offensive line, especially the interior.
Well, no doubt. Richard, I think you hit it best, man. The biggest problem with the Seahawks this year was just consistency. They had their moments. I witnessed them in Ford Field take the Lions at home in overtime. However many times in a row it's been that they've beaten the Lions, and they looked very, very good offensively. Geno Smith slinging the ball all over the yard. You didn't see that down the stretch, and you kind of saw this team that was just kind of creeping by. I know they were dealing with injuries. K9 was banged up a little bit, but the biggest issue with the Seahawks down the stretch especially was just consistency, and they're going to have a long offseason to think about ways to fix that. But, Richard, let's get to some of the games that really matter, because the reality is Week 18, there's only so much that matters. And one of the games that matters, one we saw last night, the battle for the AFC East came down to the wire. The Buffalo Bills, huge comeback in the divisions, multiple games down, and they just rally the troops in the last month and get it done. Richard, your thoughts on this Bills team?
They're rolling. They've won 5 straight. Josh Allen, has played up and down a bit throughout this stretch, but they've won. They won the games. Their defense is playing well. Rasul Douglas has been a huge part of this defensive resurgence. They traded for him, and he's made a huge difference on this defense. But Josh Allen, 350, 359 passing, 30 of 38, 2 touchdowns. He had the 2 interceptions. One of them was kind of like a punt, 4th and 2. He just put it up and gave his receiver a chance. But the other one, was kind of uncharacteristic. It looked like they weren't on the same page, he and Gabe Davis. But still, going into the playoffs, they were 6-6 at one point, Mitchell, and people thought they potentially would miss the playoffs. And now they're 11-6 and won the division, the 2 seed in the AFC. And you got to think they're going to be able to beat Pittsburgh at home. Their next game will be tough. I just don't see how they will be able to beat the Baltimore Ravens if they found a way to make it to the AFC Championship. But they'll have to cross that bridge when they get there because they've been rolling so far. They found a way to contain Tyreek Hill. Obviously, without Waddle out, It's much easier to put all the focus on Tyreek Hill. They forced Tua Tagovailoa into two uncharacteristic interceptions. And at the end of the day, nobody wants to go to Buffalo and play, especially in January. And that's where they're going to have to go at least twice. Teams are going to have to go there, starting with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have looked a lot better with Mason Rudolph under center. But I don't think it's going to be enough to beat the Buffalo Bills.
Well, Buffalo's an interesting team. They made a huge change out the offensive coordinator spot, got rid of Dorsey, brought in Brady, and all of a sudden this offense is transformed. I mean, Josh Allen, let's not overlook this. He's played like an MVP candidate over this last month and a half, and he's resurged this Buffalo Bills team. And now they enter the playoffs, like you said, with a little bit of a home field advantage. They got a running game too, Rich. Run the damn ball. They've been doing just that. They got Stephon Diggs back involved finally. And now the Dolphins are going to slide all the way to the 6th seed, have to go on the road to play the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to see, I think the NFL just wants these freaking storyboard games. Tyreek Hill going back to Arrowhead. The NFL got exactly what they wanted on opening wild card weekend. Richard, where do the Dolphins go from here? Because this is a team that is incapable of beating anyone over 500 or so, it seems. Do you think they can get it done against KC?
Well, you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, especially under these circumstances. The Dolphins have underwhelmed the last couple of weeks. Obviously, they had the blowout loss to Baltimore, and then they lose this game. So that's really not the kind of momentum you want to have going into the playoffs. I think in the same breath, Patrick Mahomes in this Kansas City Chiefs team hasn't looked the same as they have in past years. But as everybody knows, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes have earned a certain amount of respect and equity for what they've done at least the past 5 years in these playoffs. So you got to give them all the benefit of the doubt going into this game. I think they'll find a way to win it, especially the way the Dolphins have played against teams with winning records.